Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from the beautiful Principality Stadium here in Wales, where you find me today, and somebody's dorm room somewhere in the UK, where you find him. I'm Big Joe Shep, founder and chief bloke at the ThreeBOD Rugby Group, and this is my very good friend, who was half of our lead team for the DragonBalls, the Welsh Rugby Roundup show. Brandon Smith, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very well. Lots of exciting news today concerning Welsh Rugby, which we're going to get our teeth into. But yeah, very well.
Absolutely great. Right. So first time we're going to do loads more of these over the coming weeks, sort of 10-15 minutes, quick look-see. And this is all about the news that has been breaking today, which Brandon's going to cover. But it brings us into the wider issue of the club versus country dilemma. But to put the context to it, Bram, what's been happening that started all this off today?
Well, the big news, of course, is about Wales against France, which is in major doubt about happening. It was due to happen on the 24th of October, 8 o'clock at the Stade de France. But the French have been arguing amongst themselves about this. Originally, it was proposed that there be a 3-game autumn international for the French team to take part in. They were pretty happy with that originally, but now it's been suggested that they'll have to play 8 games. They're not so happy. This has been reported in Wales Online, The Telegraph, and quite a few news outlets. You can take them with a pinch of salt if you want to. Reported by Ben James, who writes quite a lot of rugby for them. Basically, what's been happening is the clubs are unhappy to release their players to the national side for this length of time. And the French clubs were so unhappy that they actually took it even further, going to court with it. But Joe, what did the court suggest that these two, the French league do, the French national team, sorry, and the French clubs do? What did the court suggest that they do?
Go on, tell us.
They suggested that they sort it out amongst themselves. So they've done all the process of going from arguing amongst themselves, right, we can't sort this out between ourselves, so we'll take it to court, and court has thrown it straight back at them and said for them to sort it out. The league season is very soon to be underway, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether this game happens. Wayne Pivac was asked this question in a press conference a couple of days ago, and he expects the game to go ahead, but he does say there's a plan B in place. So it's going to be very interesting to see the developments of this over the next few days. I think there were reports possibly that the French side could actually send a B team over to play against Wales, but I don't know if that benefits Wales that much. So it's going to be interesting to see what the French decide to do. But stay around, because this is where breaking news is going to be happening, and we're going to try and cover it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So great, mate. Thanks for that. The context that the Wales versus France warm-up game that's due to be played on Saturday, the 24th of October, may be now in doubt because the French Football Federation, the French Rugby Federation, and the LNR, the League National Rugby, who represents all the league clubs, couldn't agree to release the players. So they went to court, and there's the context. The court said, listen to what you're saying, lads. Yeah, and you're right, and you're probably right. Right, bugger off and go and talk yourself. So the wider dilemma for that, on the back of that, is this club versus country. So, excuse me. So looking at it from the club owners and the chairman and the sponsors' point of view, to lose them for 8 games. There is this World Rugby ruling, isn't it, with for the autumn international tests, but it's just a strange situation. Again, as we covered on our show last night, the English Premiership hasn't finished its league from 2020. Pro 14 is into round 2. The French top 14 is into round 4, I think it is now. So it's all mixed up anyway. So it's strange times. So is it right for the chairman and the sponsors of clubs with all the big money to be dictating again? Or how do we do it? This whole thing, I mean, I, for once, don't have the answers. Not that my answers are right, but I don't have the answers looking at this local then global. Are there too many games? Should we have carried on with the Six Nations? Again, sponsors and money and TV rights, but it's that wider dilemma. We know there are, allegedly, certain French teams back in the 2015 Rugby World Cup played at one club, paid allegedly, lawyers watching, paid 2 of their players not to €1 million tax-free, not to play for their national team. That is what was alleged at the time. Well, look, they classify it as a bonus or whatever, but it is that club. If they're paying their money and there's a set agreement that they've gone through, is it fair to the club owners and the chairman? That I'm looking at it from their point of view, and I've asked you to look at it from the players' point of view. What is it? You look at it from a player's point of view, mate, and tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, from a player's point of view, I think it's an interesting one. Many players will see it as an honour to play for their nation, and as children, we all wanted to play for a nation. I pictured myself as a young Shane Williams. That came to an abrupt end in year 8 when I realised I was rubbish at rugby.
Sorry, you were still eligible to play for the Lions on the Warren Gatland, though, mate. I would point out.
I'd have more chance of being picked than maybe some Scottish players. But regardless, anyway, we won't go there. But from a player's point of view, it is an honour to play for your nation. But if we look across the globe, this isn't an unheard of story. You look at countries such as Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, where the reality is, if they're playing for Toulon or Toulouse or playing for another big team in France, Racing, for instance, they will probably get paid more to play for their club than to play for their team. And that's an ongoing issue to this day, where the Fijians can't put out their best team, and yet some of their best players are still playing week in, week out in France. So it's really going to be, how much do the players want to play for France? Or do they want to do this? But sadly, it might come down to finances, and maybe clubs will be able to work with their players and say, look, it's simple, you'll get a bit more money working here. But I did see the financial reports for the Welsh Rugby Union that came out a couple of months ago. They lost so much money over this time. And for the Welsh Rugby Union, this is a fantastic way of getting money back. Yes, there's no fans in the stadium, but, these games, these autumn cup games, are going to be shown on Amazon Prime. S4C for us in Wales, so it's free to watch. But if you don't understand the Welsh language, you're going to have to pay for it. So it's a money way of making it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. And I'm not too sure. I'd love the game to go ahead, but again, it's about what the French want to do and how it's going to go on from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Rhiannon Stenenkamp's on. Rhiannon, good afternoon to you, mate. I hope you're well out there in South Africa. Club comes first. It's the old school me speaking here. I would say that many do. It is a quandary. And not when we discussed this over the last couple of years, they're doing these shows, the club versus country issue. But at the moment, it's even more acute to try and find a balance. I've always brought up the fact that all of these leagues are all owned by private entities, and therefore it's very, very difficult because they've got their own sponsors, and they've got the TV rights and stuff like that. And actually, if they have a crock of players, so they've got, say, I don't know, top of my head, Toulon or Clermont have got, or Racing have got 8 players in the French squad, just a number off the top of my head, lads, don't quote me on that. And they have to go, and then eventually they end up losing a game because they've lost all the key players, and they end up losing the league, and that's a whole whack of money to lose. In a time when clubs are struggling, local then global, it is very, very difficult. Is a warm-up game justified then prior to the last round of the Six Nations? I can understand why unions want to do it. But actually, maybe if we'd given that one game less, the only reason the Ireland Italy game's going ahead because it's from round 4. If it wasn't, then there'd be no warm-up games. We'd be straight into. Although I think England are playing Barbarians, aren't they? Warm-up. I can't remember what they. Anyway, that's a whole issue where you are trying to find the balance between the two. And I really don't know what that solution is. There is arguments for both sides. I just think that we need to focus more on locally where we can first, and only pay the minimum amount of, not just from a financial point of view for the clubs, the regions, whatever, but also from a bloody COVID perspective, and less travelling that we need to do. Because like one game is one game less. Gregor Galway says a lot of clubs are losing a lot of money. They are. So we've only got 15 minutes for this today. The short, sharper shite is what happened. So what do you think can be an outcome for the club versus country dilemma across the globe? Not just the France, Wales, but looking forward to this, what would be your thoughts on it?
It's a tough one. Just going quickly back to Wales, it's an issue we've seen for a long time, not just with France, obviously, but with Wales, when the players do go to their national team, the regions suffer a lot. And it's true all over the Pro 14, except for Leinster, who could probably put out a C team and still win the league. But it's an issue for Wales, and teams such as the Dragons, who've shown promise so far, they're now going to lose a lot of their star players, and they're going to really struggle from that. It's about getting the balance right, isn't it? You know, England players get paid, I think it's £20,000 to play one game for England, which, you know, for a player to be said, right, you get 20 grand to play for England, it's a no-brainer. You go and play for your country, and you go and do that. And I don't think the loyalty and the same tribalism that used to be in rugby is still there anymore, unfortunately. You know, for me, as a Wales rugby fan, when I watch the Welsh regions, as an Ospreys fan, it's painful, yes. But when I watch the Dragons play, I don't want the Dragons to lose because I'm Welsh. I want them to win. So that tribalism isn't necessarily there. But I honestly can't see how this one's going to happen. Pivac seems very confident that this game is going to go ahead. But as you said, the issue for the rest of the world with, you know, club versus country, I do think it comes down to the individual player at some points. But again, then the league, then you have to think about contracts. Is there something in their contract that says, okay, you know, you can be released for these games? You know, I know that Rhys Webb, of course, we had the 50 cap Gatland's law in Wales, which wouldn't release players. So I think that's kind of been scrapped now, to be honest. But there's so many different factors in this. We really don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I think it's something rugby really needs to address over the next few years for sure.
Yeah, Australia had it with the Gitter law, didn't they, as well? Yeah. I think post-COVID, there's got to be more flexibility and take individual clubs and individual players into account to be able to play for the nation. And I think you'll find a better balance there. Right, that's it. 13 minutes, short and sharp. In the new Short Sharp series from the ThreeBOD Rugby Group today, it has been I've been chuffed to be able to chat this through. It's wider than the Wales versus France. Will the game go ahead? We don't know, but there are issues on all sides. So to our Welsh Rugby Roundup show, part of our two-person lead team. Rihanna's out busy when I spoke to her before. But there'll be more of these in the Short Shop series of shows that we'll be doing. Brandon Smith, thanks very much, mate. Good luck at uni, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. We'll see everybody tomorrow night with the Springbok and South African Rugby Roundup show. Until then, Brandon Smith, Big Joe Shep, thanks very much, lads. Take care.